From February through May of 1862, there was a great wave of Union victories in the Western Theater. By June that year, the Union had taken control of 50,000 square miles of Confederate territory, over 1,000 miles of important riverways, and captured two capital cities, Nashville and Baton Rouge, plus the largest city in the South, New Orleans. Northern forces had killed, wounded, or imprisoned over 30,000 rebel troops. But now the war swung back east, and the Union wave would end in Virginia. On April 2, 1862, Union General George B. McClellan and his army landed at Fort Monroe, Virginia. He then advanced up the Virginia Peninsula with an army of nearly 100,000 men, besieging Yorktown, then confronting forces led by James Longstreet and Joseph E. Johnston in the Battle of Williamsburg. Marked by heavy rains, the battle ended inconclusively. McClellan marched on, casting a general doom over the South, as he came within 6 miles of Richmond, the Confederate capital. On May 31, 1862, General Joe Johnston, the leading Confederate general at the time, was severely wounded in the Battle of Seven Pines. Shortly afterward, Confederate President Jefferson Davis gave Virginian Robert E. Lee command of the Confederate Army. Lee did not believe that the Southern forces could hold Richmond against a Union attack, but he would neither surrender nor retreat. The only option was to attack. Lee had roughly 90,000 troops in his command, including 25,000 to 30,000 led by Stonewall Jackson. McClellan grossly miscalculated that he was outnumbered by the Confederates. On June 25th, he telegraphed Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, "The rebel force is stated at 200,000, including Jackson. I shall have to contend with vastly superior odds." Beginning the next day, Lee launched a series of coordinated attacks known as the 7 Days Battles. On June 27th, one day after Lee began his assaults, McClellan chose to retreat toward the James River rather than press forward. The battles at Mechanicsville and Gaines' Mill saw fierce fighting, with Lee willing to take heavy losses in order to push McClellan back. Over the next several days, at Savage's Station, Glendale, and Malvern Hill, Union forces frequently held defensive advantages, inflicting severe casualties on the attacking Confederates. By the end of the 7 days, the Union had suffered around 16,000 casualties, while Confederate losses approached 20,000. It was the bloodiest week up to that point in all of American history. Despite these higher losses, Lee had saved Richmond. In the North, frustration with McClellan's cautious leadership grew, and confidence in a quick victory in the war declined. In the South, the successful defense of Richmond boosted morale and strengthened belief in eventual independence. Union leadership reorganized its forces in Virginia, creating a new army under General John Pope and numbering about 70,000 men. Along with General Irvin McDowell, Pope was tasked with protecting Washington and renewing offensive pressure against Confederate forces. Lee sent Stonewall Jackson with about 25,000 men to strike Pope's flank and disrupt his supply lines. Jackson captured key positions near Manassas, drawing Union forces into battle along an unfinished railroad line. The raised embankments there gave the rebels cover and protection. Believing Jackson was isolated, Pope launched repeated attacks against his entrenched position. McDowell was responsible for intelligence. Unbeknownst to Pope, however, General James Longstreet had arrived with another 30,000 Confederate troops. Making matters worse, McClellan was supposed to aid Pope, but never did. Instead, he stayed near Washington in a defensive posture. Most importantly, however, Lee had concentrated his forces at the critical moment. On August 30th, 1862, Longstreet launched a massive flank attack that crushed the Union left and sent Pope's army into retreat. The Second Battle of Manassas ended in a decisive Confederate victory. Union forces suffered approximately 14,000 casualties, while Confederate losses were around 8,000. The political impact in the North was severe. Public confidence in Union leadership declined. Pressure mounted on President Abraham Lincoln to find generals capable of delivering decisive victories in the Eastern Theater. Secretary of War Stanton and Secretary of Treasury Salmon Chase urged the president to remove McClellan, but he reluctantly declined to do so. McClellan, he countered, has the army with him. We must use the tools we have. Following the triumph at Second Manassas, Lee chose to invade the North, launching the Maryland Campaign. America had already seen plenty of carnage in the war, especially at Shiloh and in the 7 Days battles. The country was in for a whole new level when Lee and McClellan would meet at Antietam, a little less than 3 weeks after the Confederates defeated Union forces at Manassas for a second time.